There's been a lot going on. It's now 30 minutes after the hour. We got Joseph Lee right here, and I'm not gonna hit him up with too much things like I normally do first time when I get on because I just pop, 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 pop. He don't have a chance to even bob and weave because I be throwing things at him. But that's just the nature of things that goes on all the time. Just found out this morning it wasn't a shooting, but it was a garage that collapsed in New York, crushing about a bunch of cars, and it was one fatality. And it just happened out of the blue. So our inner structure is in need of help. That's all I'm saying on that right there. But going to one shooting, I talked to Joseph yesterday. It was one shooting that the college kids was on a private road looking for this house and just rolled up in the driveway. You know how you pull in and back up, go the other direction. Well, this guy named 65 years old decided to come out and shot twice on the passenger side, killing the passenger of the car. And he has no reason for it, but he pleaded not guilty. So these are some of the things that we're seeing that's getting out of hand with the shooting. Um, I know that I listened to what I did, Joseph, the other day. I listened to some overseas news, Britain, all those newscasts, Australia, Africa, all of them. They are calling the United States the new Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I can see the comparison. It doesn't take every show lately. We've had a new either mass shooting or or individual shootings, obviously that are hitting national headlines. So the case you're talking about, I think is Kaylin Gillis, the woman who was shot dead for pulling into a wrong driveway.
yes,
And I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about this 84-year-old man that shot Ralph Yarrow, 16 years old, just showing up at the wrong house, ringing the doorbell, and now that gets him killed. So, and he's seeking, this young man was on his way to, I think, Princeton or Stanford, an academic standout,
yeah,
good young man. And, it's getting to the point where, we've got all these, we've talked about on this show all the time, the guns and that are out there and the weak laws and things of that nature. But I think this is just a perfect example of how we talk about people with homicidal ideation, suicidal ideation, but I don't think we're really getting down to a lot of what actually can happen. We've seen the reverberations of a lot of stuff. We had the Alabama, what is it, the Alabama shooting
yeah,
at the
that,
Sweet 16 party, a Sweet 16 party, right?
mm-hmm.
In Dadeville, Alabama, where 32 people were injured. Let's see how many people, I forget how many were killed in that, 4 killed. So
Yes,
there's another mass shooting right there. So we still don't hear much coming from our politicians, but we do see cracks, like we saw in Tennessee, where some politicians are standing up, possibly, to even be expelled from their position to address this issue. So things are coming to a head. But when you got to understand is there's a lot of people out there that are mentally unstable, possibly filled with hate or rage, and
yeah,
they're watching these shows. You talked about conditioning, right? And how shows like Fox News, who purposely, I think it's fair to say now, purposely push lies and garbage that leads to the phobia and the fear. Remember that we talk about greed, fear, and phobia.
yeah,
See, and the danger of fear and phobia, left unchecked, it can turn into hatred. And some people are already there. I think when this plays out, when you have a young man who was obviously not a threat, just ringing your doorbell and get shot through a glass, not through a door where you can't see who's there. He could see, at least I could tell one of his eyes looks kind of funny, but I don't think it's that funny. He could sit there. He saw that there was somebody there, but he shot at this young man praise God that he wasn't killed, fighting for his life, for just showing up at the wrong house. Lady showing up in the driveway, just turning around in the driveway. And I think he tried to say something. They were acting menacing, you know, some girls in a car acting menacing, turning around in the driveway. So, but then you got to look at it this way too. We've got Florida, Texas now having open carry laws. People can, just carry a gun and not take any type of training. I've got a concealed weapons permit, prior military. One thing you're taught in that concealed weapons class is that you're responsible for that bullet. You're responsible for knowing when to pull that gun. Ringing the doorbell, pulling up in the driveway does not mean that your life is threatened. You don't have the right to brandish a firearm because you're pissed off or you don't like somebody ringing your doorbell. So yeah, we are kind of getting like the wild, wild west. I'd say it's even worse because, there's a lot of shooting going on, and I don't want to say, but there was some horrible things going on, but it was more or less one side versus another. Now it's everybody against everybody.
Yeah.
At any time, in any way. I'm not validating and saying that, the slaughter of, millions of Native Americans, and then also the retaliation of Native Americans on Caucasians taking their land was not horrific, but I think we're pretty much, I don't know if they were having shootouts every day, whereas we're having them every day, almost every day, every week, mass shootings in schools. You can't name a place where an active shooting situation hasn't happened. And we don't seem to have that motivation. We're starting to wake up a little bit, not much, but wake up a little bit in terms of what needs to be done. But it just makes me sick to think that, as a young, especially African American or person of color, you can't really do much. You can't go to a Sweet 60. You can't go to birthday parties. You're not safe in school. If you show up at the wrong house, ringing the doorbell, now you can get shot. If somebody doesn't recognize you in your own neighborhood that you're walking home, somebody like Zimmerman is sitting out there trying to do the job of the police, and still I think that leaves that still hasn't been addressed well. Zimmerman is still walking around free,
Yes.
And Trayvon Martin is still gone. So yeah, it's more like the Wild Wild West, but there's a little racial element there. Now, this case with Kaylin Gillis, I don't think that was a racial component there, but I think there's a fear and phobia component there. And people are just on the edge. We've got all these polarization going on. The mindset is, hey, I got a gun, I'm going to use it. Well, if you use it incorrectly, it's got to be some stiff penalties, and these people got to go to jail. They got to go. Just because you get hot, you get mad, don't want somebody on your property. I have a no trespassing sign on my house. They ring the doorbell all the time. I've got a glass pane, got glass on both sides of my door. And I see no trespassing. And they'll still sit there and still talk, whatever. Now I might get irritated, but I'm not going to pull my gun just because you ring my doorbell. Now you try to breach that door, and now we got another problem.
There you go.
Now you try to come into the property. Yeah, now we got a problem. But ringing the doorbell, last time I checked, most of these don't ring the doorbell, right? But now there are some cases where people run the doorbell and people get overpowered. Look, you have the option of not answering your door. If you come to my house and you're unannounced, you probably will be left outside. Unless I know you, recognize you, whatever. I got my ring out there, but even if I didn't have the ring is a new thing. But, if I didn't have the ring out there, you could see the front and the door, the front of my property and the door, I'm going to look out there and see who it is. We've done that before. Remember, in the day, you peek behind the curtain, see if there's somebody there that you want to see. And
Oh
you don't want to be bothered. You
that
can
was
put that curtain on back, and the person just stand there until they figure out you don't want to be bothered.
yeah. You know,
Yeah, but you don't knock in the, I'm not going to shoot through my window because somebody's standing there that didn't, show up. You got people with dementia, that may come to a wrong address, but you can't tell me this young man was a threat. You can't tell me that. What you can tell me is this old man sitting there watching Fox News all day, and then sees a young African American male come up to his door, ring a doorbell, and he shoots through. You got to know that there's some things going on in his mind that shouldn't be, and whether or not, and obviously not responsible enough to have a firearm. We've got to start policing ourselves and coming up with some laws with some teeth.
well,
And I'm not sure what the law would be for common sense.
yeah. One point I want to make with this, two things I want to make is the kid got up, went through several houses in the neighborhood that refused to let him in to answer. Then one door he go to, they tell him to lay on the ground, put his hands behind his back. It was a neighbor across the street that I read yesterday that seen what was happening and went over there to the side of the boy, and he thought the kid was dead. He said, I wouldn't want this to happen to my kids. That's the reason why I went out. So that neighborhood, for saying, was the wrong neighborhood because nobody reached out to help him when he asked for help.
Remember that old saying that it's a village, it takes a village?
Yeah.
I guess you got to be in the right village.
Amen to that.
Because this village isn't looking out for everybody. I remember years ago, there was a situation where a young man cut through my lawn, right, in Michigan, went to his house, and he had, I guess he had forgotten his key. And the police were called. So I looked out my back window. I saw the guy had, walked through my lawn, but he was out there for a long time. And then all of a sudden he tried to go through a window. And I recognized the young man. I recognized him. When he was trying to go through the window, the law enforcement came behind and they pulled their weapon on him. So I started shouting immediately, hey, he lives there. You know what I'm saying? I went outside to make sure that the police knew that I knew who he was, and explained that, hey, this young man lives in this house. Now, I'm just going to tell this story, not because I don't want any, hey, that was a good job. You might have saved somebody's life. None of that. That's your job in the village, is to look out for young folks and to get involved, right? Not to sit back and post on social media, grab your phone and watch what happens so you can say, oh, it's a shame. Get out there and get involved. When I think about George Floyd and I think about the people that have been killed, how many people are sitting there watching it go down instead of getting involved and making sure it does not go down? If that crowd sitting there while George Floyd was getting killed would have got involved with those officers, demanded they get off his neck as a crowd, he might still been here.
Yeah.
And I know, when people are gonna say, oh, well, you don't get involved, you don't interact with the police and all that type of stuff. And you might be, look, well, I'll put it like this. The Black Panthers had a philosophy. And they were going to police the streets and police against, police brutality. It's not a new thing. Not all police are bad. I'm not saying that they are. But there's enough of them out here that you got to be willing to get involved enough to say, hey, get off this person and try to intervene as best you possibly can. All right. Now I will say people were responding verbally when George Floyd was being killed. But I got more involved. I kept approaching, even though those guns were out, until those guns were put down, and identifying that young man and say, hey, he lives here, must have got his key, gave him a chance to de-escalate the situation.
Yeah.
And I was watching a show. It was Roland Martin, which is a great show, a great radio show that brings out some very important points. I love how he systematically shuts down some folks, and says, he's noticed when law enforcement and Caucasians get involved, there's a lot of times a de-escalation. But when law enforcement and African American people involved, it
Escalate.
always escalates.
Yeah.
Right. So what we got to do is figure out how to get folks to de-escalate instead of escalating situations. And that fear and that phobia, I think, is happening behind the shield. And also what happens when fear and phobia is unchecked, it turns into sometimes hatred. Right. And that's the outcome of this fear and phobia. Then you couple the fact that we got way too many guns out here in the street with people that shouldn't have a firearm. They're not either stable in mind or they're racist, and that's still not stable in mind. And we got to address this problem. You can't tell me that we can't deal with this situation because other countries are not having the shooting situations we're having.
Yeah. No, one point you just brought up about the guns, and I want the audience to hear me what I'm getting ready to say. Now, on one hand, the crazy politicians, excuse me, are going out and say crime is rampant in America. We got to do something about crime. Okay. I got something to do about it. Quit passing all these nonsense gun laws that everybody and their mama could buy a gun. You want to know why crime is up? You letting this happen. You can't have talking about crime on one hand, and on the other hand, you can be 18 years old and buy an assault rifle. Now,
Look,
wait, there's one state that I looked up was Massachusetts. If you look up Massachusetts law, America could model what Massachusetts is doing with their gun laws.
tell us about it. What's going on in Massachusetts so they know.
The matter of fact, you can't buy an assault rifle. They're just banned from there. They've got the red flag law, background check, everything we're hollering for. They don't want to do. Massachusetts is doing it, and we can model from Massachusetts itself because they're doing it. They're going out with mental illness. They got all that we've been talking about for months on this show. There's one state in America that's doing it, and that's Massachusetts.
Yeah, I think we need to lay out, in more detail exactly what that law is. So we're gonna, maybe on one show kind of lay it out and talk about what the option is, what we can expect our legislators, to do. And I think it's going to have to be a culture shift, in this country to say, okay, enough is enough. Yeah. We're going to have to value our kids over, access to firearms and weak laws that allow more of these guns on the street, because these situations, and I'm looking at the Alabama shooting, the Sweet 16 party, just a horrible, gut-wrenching tragedy where a young man was saving his sister, gets shot, killed, high school football star Phil Dowdle, 18, bright star, being killed by just straight up, nonsense. I know people. I know people that even parties, they're supposed to be, little social gatherings. People are bringing guns. I know a person personally who was working, trying to man the door at just a party for teens to get together. When he tried to reject, a person from coming into the party, turn around, kid pulls out a gun, shoots him in the head. Fortunately, the bullet grazed his head, his skull, instead of entering his skull. But unfortunately, this is what we're dealing with when we have so many guns on the street in a mentality of, like you said, the wild, wild west, right?
Yeah.
And it's too much of it going on. But you got to start looking at the foundational pillars of why crime happens. And they're separate issues. We're talking about a racial component. We're talking about economic components, the poverty. We're talking about a mindset component. And until we can start really addressing these issues and the politics of non doing anything sensible, I challenge us to look at the parties and demand more from our politicians. We have to demand more. Meaning, like, if you are sitting there and all you're doing is saying no and you don't have a plan that makes sense, you're gone by the next voting cycle. If any politician stands up there and says, well, we don't like this, okay, then when you say you don't like something, where is your something to replace it? So we can examine it. And if you don't have anything that makes any sense, you're out the door. You're incompetent. You're incompetent. You got to go. Until the politicians know if they don't come with it, they're going to just push for the status quo, and they're going to still be there. We're going to continue to have this problem. We're going to continue to have a problem where we have weak legislation, where we have obvious and serious, crucial problems going on in our communities all over the country, because it's not just a mental health problem. See, people they're quick to go to mental health. I'm a therapist, LPC in 2 states, seeing clients all over the country, all over the world. And I can tell you we don't have the same problems in other countries that we do here in the United States. We don't have them. We got mental health issues all over the world. But we got a murder and a shooting problem here in the United States because of the access to guns. So don't just call it a mental health problem, because if the world has the same mental health issues pretty much all over the world, but they're not having the mass shootings and the shootings, then it's not a mental health issue necessarily. It's a gun access issue. So how do you address it? Common sense says you address the access issue to guns, and other people will say, oh, well, it'll never happen in this country. Don't say ever. Don't ever say never.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of nevers that people said in this country that changed. Now, I'm just trying to figure out what it's going to take for us to understand and not get so confused as to what to do. Does it have to be somebody in your family that you lose before you go, you know what, enough is enough? We have a lot of shootings that have happened this year already. We're only in April.
Too many.
When are we going to say, okay, enough is enough? Massachusetts, great. I'm glad they're taking the first step. But I really think it's got to be a mindset thing, right? Where we see how people are being brainwashed to think that they need to have access to these horrible options to dealing with no real threats or problems. That, by definition, is a mental illness. You have a unrealistic or irrational response to a non-threatening situation. That means something's going on in your head. That phobia and that fear that you have has turned into something. And now you're deeming people that aren't a threat are a threat because of what you're seeing, the images you're seeing on TV. The Democrats are so weak on crime that you got to take over your streets, you got to take over your house, your property, all that type of stuff. When I guess crime doesn't count when it talks about January 6th, right? That's not a crime. But ringing a doorbell, maybe, or pulling up in the driveway, that's the crime we got to shoot somebody over.
Yeah.
So we got to get past the hypocrisy. We got to get past the brainwashing, the intentional brainwashing, which I think you can see now. People can see now. Fox News is a key part of that brainwashing. They're putting out stuff that they know is not factual. They settled because they didn't want they're so-called TV stars, because you can't call them newscasters, because if it's not news, then what is it? They're TV stars.
It's a magazine, basically.
No, it's not even a magazine, because a magazine you read and you have to be more accountable with what you write, right? But if you're just giving your opinion, but your opinion is laced with or supposed to be a fact. See, what people got to understand is there's a consequence to putting false information out there. We talk all the time about, hey, if somebody wants to write in, call in. If we're saying something that's not true, call in. Tell us where we're not true. But don't step into the ring with no weak stuff. Because, people have found out the hard way that we might be nice going people, we might be karaoke singers, we might be whatever. But if you step in that ring, if you step in there and present some garbage, we're going to send you back home.
Amen to
you
that.
clean up your act and come again. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to say no names, but it's happened recently, and it happens all the time. And that's why people don't call into the show. We got about 10,000 listeners. Nobody got nothing to say, so it must be some truth to it. And I'm open to debate. I don't have my awards up there on debate because it was so long ago, but I debated against some of the top attorneys, whatever. Now they're attorneys, whatever in the country, and we used to tear them out the frame. Place more karaoke that too debate contest than I care to count, because if you know the facts, and here's the thing, shout out to my teachers, the educators that were in my life that taught me how to critically think. Don't just believe what you see on TV. Get in, do the research, read. Right now, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different news articles up right now so we can talk about the facts. And you got to read between the lines. I don't even just take what they say here. I have to deduce and add some common sense and infuse it to what's really going on here.
Yeah.
Nobody's told us yet what this 84-year-old man was thinking. But I'll tell you what, when it plays out, watch and see what happens. Probably, conservative, watching Fox News all day, 84 years old, and whatever you watch every day has an effect on your mental health. That's why I like talking to other people. I like talking to opposing opinions, because that's how you sharpen your mind. If not, you become delusional. You become disgruntled. You start falling into these fear and phobias that evolve into the hatred that turn into this man here, 84-year-old Andrew Lester, that's facing first-degree assault, an armed criminal action charge, but going to be probably more than that, who could possibly face the rest of his life in jail. And you know what? 84 years old, he's on the last, phase of his life anyway. But still, to spend those your golden years,
and
behind bars, well, it's I think it's deserved.
Yeah.
But if you do the crime, you're gonna do the time. No exception.
Okay. Let's switch gears to Austin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why I'm bringing that up. This guy drove down Black Lives Matter rally, shot and killed somebody. He was found guilty. But what they discovered after trial, all his hatred for blacks was on his computer. That was not in the trial. But now Greg Abbott waiting for him so he could pardon him. Say it's a travesty for him to go to prison. And I'm trying to figure out, this guy got hatred. He drives down there. He said he was doing something in self-defense. Last I found out, driving down where somebody's rallying at and shooting him is not self-defense. And that's what he's putting up. And now Abbott wants to turn around and pardon this guy when he can. It's going to be several months down the road, but it's just an idea. Like you said, it's our politicians. Why? Why they feel the need to go ahead and do this? They got a hidden agenda.
Well, I mean, the hidden agenda isn't so hidden anymore, Ron. I mean, it's always been the agenda, but one thing that 45 has allowed people to do is be more outward with their racism. To just be more outward with it, right? And to hide behind these laws, that's the reason why they don't want to tighten them up, because it's just the old uh, thing of that's why the Black Lives Matter movement kind of took hold in so many communities and the mindset, because it just seems like the laws and the policies and the politicians act like Black lives don't matter. Yes, you found this information out, but these terrorists go in and kill people in a community, and then they turn around and say they were the ones that were scared. They were the ones who were intimidated. Then you find out later on that there were some other things that we knew in the onset, right?
Yeah.
That there was something wrong. We knew that the people that were there, the people that saw what happened, saw him as the aggressor. It wasn't the other way around, right? So what they want to do is, we talked about it in the last show, the Republican Party and the Conservative Party's strategy is called gaslighting. They project, a manipulative agenda, blame the other person for the crime that they've committed, and try to pretend like they're the victim when actually they're the wolf in sheep's clothing, or appearing to be for the law, sheep's clothing. But we know a wolf when we see one.
Yeah.
And now we got to understand why. We got to figure out why the wolf is being released after he's killed. Why he's being released? Who's releasing him? Abbott. Well, we know who's voting for Abbott. We know who's voting for him and still allowing him to be in power. And there have been efforts to get him out of power. And you know what? When people get tired, the majority of people that can vote, you can't sit on the sideline and complain and not get in that ballot box and let your vote be heard. That's what we got to do. All those folks that don't vote think the politicians, the right or the left, they're just not going to work with you. Guess what? If you're not voting, they're definitely not going to work with you because you don't exist to them.
Yeah, we know about that not voting. We had somebody that had a brother that told us, well, he don't vote. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and what was funny is, it's not funny, it's tragic. He had some valid points that he was trying to make, but he nullified himself. The moment you say you don't vote, they cut your mic off in their head. You're not saying nothing, because if you're not voting, they don't have to worry about you, right? Don't have to worry about you. They're only looking at the folks and that are going to get out there. And like I told him, you need to get 10 people that are thinking like you and show up at the ballot box and get your voice heard. But first, you need to educate yourself on the issues.
Yes.
Educate yourself on what's going on in the community, because, unfortunately, a lot of these politicians, they're not even educated on what's going on in the community. They're listening to their own rhetoric, and they're getting confused. Because the first thing, if you want to stump a politician, is to talk about, what is your plan? How much time have you spent in the communities you're talking about, where there's all these problems? And you got to understand the different layers of the problems. There's racial issues, there's social economic issues, there's educational issues. And you got to know how to address those issues. So yes, money's going to be involved. Anytime you're talking about money and going into the community, there's going to be a pushback. Why is it? We can send trillions of dollars or billions, if not trillions of dollars, over to Ukraine, but we got a problem when we're trying to get democracy right here in the United States.
Yeah.
We have no problem talking about crime unless it's the crime that we're doing or our constituents are doing. Then it's something else, So we got to get back to reality and call people who they are. If you're an enemy of the state, as Marjorie Greene which who's backing off her rhetoric. She said something today that kind of blew my mind. She actually said that if Donald Trump is elected president, it would tear this country in half. When did that happen? When did she actually start dropping knowledge like that?
They starting to distance themselves from him. That's what they're doing.
They're starting to see that them 34 felonies didn't come out of being plucked out of the air.
Yeah.
And just like Fox News, they dropped that 7, they got hit with that 7. And this is also, that's the first charge, first case of $700 and something million. You don't settle out of court unless you know that you've been up to some mess. And they were starting to set up tents and all that. So you won't see Carl Tuckerson and all these other folks going into court to try to explain why they put false information out there. Look, I think it's time for people to start really thinking about why they believe what they believe. And what side of history do you want to be on? It's obvious what the problem is in this country. But the question is, who's going to be willing to stand up on the right side of history, on the right side of what needs to be done to protect our kids and our communities from lunatics with mass destruction weapons? You want to talk about what was going on back in Iraq and weapons of mass destruction? We got weapons of mass destruction right here in the United States. And we're not willing to go in. You're willing to send people like me and other folks across seas to go deal with false weapons of mass destruction when we got the true weapons of mass destruction right here in the United States. And they're called ARs, semi-automatic handguns, weapons with people that are mentally ill or deranged, following this fear, greed, and phobia. Those are the true enemies of the state. And until we recognize them as such, we're going to have this problem. We're going to have this problem. And if you're in a legislative position, you're doing nothing, you are also an extension of that problem. You might as well be a walk around AR. And you know what? Look on the shirt. Half of them wear an AR on their lapel.
Yes, they do.
They're telling you who they are. I'm fighting for the right for y'all to keep on killing each other. So why is that? Why are they fighting for the right for us to keep on killing each other? Because that's really what it boils down to. Let's start having that discussion. What's going on in our country? Because, you can't put it all on mental health, because mental health is going on all over the world. I know. I've had clients all over the world, right from this office, from what you're seeing right here. I've talked to people from Africa, Germany, UK, all around the world, United States, most of the states, right here from this office. The only places having a gun problem like we're having is here in the United States. So what's the common denominator? Access to gun and ineffective legislators that know that they're not going to be moved because of this confused version of understanding the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
We're being played. And as long as we allow politicians to play us, it's going to happen. So don't cry me a river, Republicans. Do something about it. Do something about it. But even in the face of horrific situations, I'll never forget the last time we had a meeting when the President Biden gave that address, and they had the parents of was it Terry Nichols? Who was it?
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, let me see. Let me make sure I get this. That wasn't Terry Nichols. Dang, what was the name of the young man that was just killed? It's horrific. It's so many of us. It's hard to even keep the name straight. So many people being killed. But we had the parents there at the Capitol, and they wouldn't even stand up. They wouldn't even show support for this family. Just lost their son. It shows the mindset. But they can sit there and scream, liar, at the president, Marjorie Greene, but they won't stand up. They're so impassioned about that, but you won't even show your support for a parent that's lost their child.
The gun violence. Yeah.
The gun violence.
Yeah.
How serious can you be? How serious can you be? So I'm gonna find the name of that young man, because that's not sitting right with me. That I forgot that. But while I'm looking that up, you can go ahead, and if you want to chime in on anything.
I was going to go ahead and chime in. An unscientific survey was done in Florida. And do you know that almost 50% of Democrats in that state did not vote when the election was done to have Santos back there again? And that's mind-boggling. We talk about people not voting. A vote will change. This is a story I said before. I stayed in a little town called Bernie, Texas. This was this constable she was just plain shouldn't have been in office. So we put together a little online newspaper to get our facts out there on why she shouldn't be in office. When election time came around, that constable lost by 13 votes. By 13 votes. So you tell me your vote doesn't matter. It does matter. We need to get out and vote. I'm like you, Joseph. If you didn't vote, stop talking to me. There's nothing you can say to me to justify the reason why you didn't vote.
Well, it's not. People say it all the time, and I hear the argument. But I just think of people like John Lewis, that got almost beat to death and fought his whole life, and we still don't have the Voting Rights Act passed. And as long as, because no matter whatever victory you're searching for or thinking about not participating in the government, what you're doing is basically saying, well, we don't have to address you yet, because you're not frustrated enough to even act on the one power lever that you do have.
Yeah.
So, if you don't show up, then you're not going to be responded to, and you're disrespecting those that have lost their lives to give you that opportunity. So, get involved. If you think America has got problems, sitting around and just talking about it, that's not going to solve anything. You got to do something. What's your action step? What are you doing about it? That's my question. And I ask that on both sides. What are you actually actively doing about it? Are you bringing education? Are you bringing awareness? And then at the end of the day, what action step can you take to change what you don't like or what you see? But you got to also be educated on what's actually going on. So
I was up here. I went into Massachusetts gun laws. They said that you must have a firearm identification card, a license to carry a firearm. Identification card must be required for any gun that you buy. Shotgun, I'm trying to pull up all this stuff. Well, when the internet runs slow, it runs slow.
yeah.
I'm gonna go over this with a fine-tooth comb because this is very, very interesting on what they're doing. It's section 131F in the Massachusetts general laws. So if anybody want to take time out and look that up, it has everything in there about the gun law on what they're doing there in Massachusetts.
Yeah. What's that name again?
Section is 131F.
Okay. So people can start looking that up.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to find the name of that young man. And that the national address when Biden addressed the nation.
Yeah.
And nobody stood up. Nobody showed any support on that side, on the Republican side.
We got a couple people that sent something. Martha Rice said greed, subliminal message. She put that down, and that's what you're doing, planting it in their heads. Remember years ago when vinyl was out, records are out. If you play the thing backwards, some of the rock stars are putting a message in there. You only hear it going backwards. Remember that?
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. All those things. But I mean, they don't have to play it backwards now. They just say it right up front.
They say it right in front of you, and they're proud to say it. What they call it, a dog whistle. It's not a dog whistle. they putting out there. That's not a whistle at all. They're just saying it. And like they say, throwing spaghetti against the wall, seeing what's going to stick.
Yeah.
So,
Well, too much of it is sticking. And I think we have to ask ourselves, why are they able to get away with so much lack of action
yeah.
and, lack of plans? I mean, where are the plans? Where is the counter plans to whatever's going on? Okay, if you don't like what's going on with politics, if you don't like what the Democrats are saying, okay, well, what's your plan to address the issue? And that's when they get stumped. Well, I don't know what the plan is. Well, then you shouldn't be in office, because that's what your job is, to have a plan that is viable, that's going to make a difference. If you don't have that, then you don't need to be in that seat. That's part of the problem.
Well, one of them is what's his name? The House Speaker. I don't even know his name. Can't think of his name. He's blaming Biden for not coming to the table to negotiating with the budget and all that stuff. Well, you can't negotiate.
McCarthy. Are you talking about McCarthy?
Yeah, you can't
Okay.
negotiate anything if you didn't bring anything to the table to negotiate about. Now I don't
Well,
get it. You saying they're not doing this, but like I said, where are your plans?
I think you got to look at it. That's kind of the plan, right? Is all I have to do is say, well, you're not coming to the table. Come to the table to discuss what? If you don't have a plan to discuss it, here's my plan, right? This is what I think what I want to do. And I think a lot of things that Biden has done has been effective in terms of his strategy and his approach to bringing the economy back. And what they don't like is that it's actually working. See, that's why they don't want to come to the table and talk, because when you go through the talking points and you go through all and you hold them accountable for the things that they say and the results that would get versus the things that were done and the results that are working, they don't want to come to the table and talk about that. So they gaslight and say, well, he doesn't want to come to the table. Well, all you've done at the table is talk about what's not going to work, and then you don't put anything on the table that makes any sense. And when you start looking at the things that you put on the table, it's things that you really don't want to stand on, like ending Social Security. See, when Biden called him out like that, oh, no, we're not saying that, no. And he said, well, come to my office. Look, I got the document. This is what you said. Well, then they want to shy away and say, oh, well, no, no, that's what you said. Where's your plan? And when the plans that you do have, you don't even want to stand behind.
Yeah.
So again, if you don't see a clear, concise plan, and you don't have a whole bunch of aha moments on how this will address the issue, then they're just gaslighting you, manipulating you. Because the one thing they know that American people is we're frustrated. We've been frustrated for a long time. And what happens when you get so frustrated, then sometimes no action seems like an action. Well, we can't seem to get it right, so we're just going to stop doing something. Well, that, in a way, kind of sounds like a weird way of people that don't vote. I'm so frustrated, I might as well not do anything. Is that a clear thought process?
Yeah. Here's something for you. A comment. Do you think the lack of taking a stand is learned helplessness?
Definitely a part of it. I think it's definitely a part of learn helplessness. If you want to learn when we talk about learn helplessness, a lot of times that's learned generationally, right? So you've got people, that's actually a perfect example or mental health phenomenon that talks about how that crab barrel effect. Well, I couldn't get out of this situation of poverty. I didn't get out of the situation. Not you couldn't, but I didn't get out of the situation. School was, against me. Everything was against me. So we're not going to progress. We're going to stay at this level. So when you look at, I think the goal of these broken legislative policies and procedures is to get people to feel like learn helplessness. Oh, it's not going to change. It's not going to, we're not going to make headway. Well, thanks to brothers like the guys over in Tennessee that said enough is enough, and they're going to keep standing up until change happens. That's how you get out of learn helplessness. like these 5 gentlemen on my wall back here that stood up for social injustice, that stood up and lost their lives, some of them standing up. That's how you get the change. That's how you get it. By standing up, saying something, doing something, not going, oh, well, it's never going to get better. Like that old Bruce Hornsby song. That's just the way it is. No, okay. Well, we all know how it is, but don't you believe them? Because in any country, one of the main things that makes this country great is that we have the opportunity to change our leaders and our legislation. And it used to be without a violent transition. But Trump even tried to change that.
Right.
All right. And the damage, like I was reading one of the articles, the damage that Fox News and people like that, what they've done to the democracy is way more than the 2.7 billion or the 784 million that they've got. These folks are truly, in my opinion, the enemies to democracy, because if democracy for it to work, you have to have a well-educated population. Then when you're sending out misinformation intentionally, you're destroying the fabric of the country. If you are knowingly saying that this is a credible source of information and people are just too lazy to actually look and find out the information for themselves, follow their own instinct or in their own moral compass. And maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe the moral compass is so corrupt that they're willing to hear this garbage and think it's true because they want it to be. And if that's the case, then we really got some work to do. We got some work to do on the conscience of this country and what we're going to do to move forward and understand our number one natural resource is not oil. It's not chips. It's our children.
Yeah.
That's our number one natural resource. And if we're not protecting them, we're not doing anything at all. Correct. That's our first priority, is to protect our children. And if they're not safe, our future isn't safe, literally.
Yeah.
Now, if we want to get down to it, get down to it. If you don't know, if you're saying a prayer that, oh my God, and the safest place in this world should be in an elementary school or in a place of worship, at a Sweet 16 birthday party. Those should be the safest places in the world. And whatever changes that has to be removed from society. As Malcolm X would say, by any means necessary. That's what it's about. Don't look to mental health, because you know what? If you're crazy and not willing to do anything, what's mental health going to do but tell you, yeah, you're crazy. It's documented. I can give you the DSM number. I can call you crazy. Okay. But then what are you going to do about it? In this country, we say you're crazy, but here's access to an assault rifle. Second Amendment says you can have it. That's the insane part. That's the crazy part. Second Amendment didn't say nothing about you having access to no AR or no semi-automatic handgun. I said it many times before. I'll say it again. That technology wasn't even available. Musket. That's what they had back then. So again, are we going to be stupid? Continue to be stupid and pretend like these weapons that are killing our kids, destroying our communities, black on black crime, as they say, white on white crime. Because another thing, I was listening to Roland Martin. I think he's right on about that. We always talk about black on black crime, but when is it white on white crime? Why don't we have those? Why don't we break it down that way? So crime, we look at that in general, but then we always want to talk about black on black crime. Okay, it's all crime. But we got to break into why there's crime that's so-called black on black. Since we don't control any ports, but a lot of things are in our communities that we didn't bring in. We don't bring in these communities, cocaine and all that. Those things are brought into our communities. ARs and all that. I don't know any gun distributors, companies that are run by black folk.
Yeah.
So they're in here for what? Fear and phobias, crowd control. And then we put in there mental illness and the social experiment that we've had since projects were created. Look at some of these studies. Look at what's going on. You try to understand all these different levels of socioeconomic oppression, how it plays out to the current climate of having access to weapons, and the effect of media and perceptions. Now, yes, I get it. You got to have sense enough to go, you know what? That's for TV. That's a mess. That's not real. I need to focus on what needs to be going on. But here's the thing. Look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first level is survival. And then you start moving up to higher levels to what's called self-actualization. What you're asking people to do is not even in human nature. The first level is survival. And if I can't survive, if I don't see myself surviving, then I don't ever get to those levels of self-actualization. And that's where you get learned helplessness. Because they're not able to look too far. I'm trying to eat. I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to navigate, moving through my community. And I got black and white folks trying to kill me and law enforcement trying to kill me. And you're wondering why I can't become this great thinker and think about how to affect my community. I'm just trying to survive day to day in some of these communities. And I've got enemies on all sides. The ones that look like me and the ones that don't look like me.
Yeah.
And even the ones that are putting on a shield and coming to protect me is well known is some of the law enforcement agencies, a lot of them are infiltrated with white supremacists. So again, we have a culture problem. We have a gun problem. Mental health obviously is implied, but stop looking for part of the solution, look for the whole solution. We got to hold people accountable that are willing to sit there and allow this system to keep killing our children, killing our babies, killing our future. Because guess what? There's a threat outside this country that's happy to see this continue. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, China, Russia, North Korea, they cool with us being fragmented and being torn up on the inside. Yeah, it's interesting. When was the last time you heard any of those countries talk about the gun problem here in the United States? You ever heard any of those leaders talk about the tragedies and all the deaths and the mass shooting? No sympathy from them, man. We're so sorry what's going on in your country. Not one time. Remember back in the day when there would be a mass shooting or a tragedy, other countries would say, oh my God, this is horrible. We send our support, or we, send our whatever, our care, our whatever. That ain't happening no more, is it?
Nope.
Why?
No.
So your actions speak so loudly. I can't hear a word you're saying. In fact, I think China just got busted for having a police station here in Manhattan that were intimidating other Chinese folks that were critical of China. They just arrested in Russia the gentleman that they didn't try to poison 2 or 3 times and just sentenced him, and who's most likely going to die in jail because he's speaking out against Putin. So you got to understand who you're dealing with, who the enemy really is, and start connecting some dots here. Because your old boy 45, he was really cool with Putin. He was really cool with Kim Jong-il. And those folks don't have a good agenda for the United States. Why do you think they keep shooting all these missiles up in the air? It ain't because it's 4th of July or the holiday over there. This ain't fireworks. These are tactical weapons that they're trying to calibrate to hit targets, American targets. So in the Capital League program, I always teach young men to look at news on the local, national, and international level.
Yeah.
Okay. We get into that GPS on the YouTube, all that. What I teach young men to do is look at the news on their local level, see how that's affecting them immediately, the national level, how that's affecting everybody, and the international level, things that we're doing or not doing, how it's affecting the world and how we're being perceived. And then look at that in relation to your life and what you need to be pushing towards and voting and educating yourself on to vote intelligently. And if you're doing all that, if you're looking at all three of those levels, there should be a theme that's coming clear. Our politicians are bought and sold. They're not really fighting for us. I don't know who they're fighting for. I think it's the major corporations because we down here are struggling. And when I say struggling, obviously, I'm not talking about financially. A lot of us are not struggling financially. A lot of us are. But for those that aren't struggling as much financially, we're struggling to enjoy the freedoms that we're supposed to have implicitly. Remember, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. How you have a pursuit of happiness if your kids can't go to school, you can't go shopping, you can't go to a place of worship without wondering, is lunatic going to show up with an AR because he lost his job, snapped, and can't find adequate mental health care and going to shoot up something? Your kids can't go to the store, go ring the doorbell, can't go trick-or-treating, can't go nowhere like we used to back in the day because somebody might be crazy enough sitting there with a shotgun or AR or whatever he had. Somebody ring the doorbell. There you go.
Yep. That's
so where are we at right now? Because home of the free, it don't seem so free no more. Home of the brave, nah. Brave isn't sitting in your house at 80-something years old with a shotgun shooting somebody because they ring the doorbell. Brave isn't having some females in a car pull up and trying to turn around and menacing. I don't know. Were they trying to hit you? Were they trying to run up into your house? If they're just trying to turn around and you shooting at them, that to me sounds like an entitled a move of somebody. You just not wanting somebody on your property, right? So are we really free by all these guns being accessible by all these different type of people? Or are we imprisoning ourselves through our own ignorance? Greed, fear, phobia. That's what seems to be running our country and the underpinnings of all this stuff is greed, fear, and phobia. And now the last part is that fear and greed, phobia, unchecked turns into hatred. That is an actionable item, as we have seen. And this is how it plays out when you have a well-armed society. And I have to wonder if that's not the goal. We talk about this so-called civil war. Is this what they mean? Is this a civil war? Where people just aren't free? If you look at Montesquieu spirit of the laws and understand how that works, laws are supposed to be designed to give people freedom between the hedges. The hedges are supposed to be based on moral and universal laws that protect people. Who's being protected? The lunatics are being protected.
Yes.
I don't know how free people are feeling, but if you don't feel comfortable going to a large crowd, they said, I saw a study, 84% of Americans have changed their lifestyle and behaviors based on all these active shooter situations. 84%. That's a pretty high number. So when are we going to realize we're not free anymore? Because of our own efforts of understanding the misinterpreted understandings of what freedom is.
Yeah. So, well, you just speaking that, this just came across the head of the FBI division here in San Antonio saying it is critical and crucial for a community to get involved to stop all this violence that's going around in the area.
But how do they get involved? Right?
Yeah.
You write into your politicians. You vote. Can I say that again? Maybe you need to say that 2 more times, bro. You vote. That's how you get involved. And you get these fools out of here that aren't doing anything. Right?
Speaking about voting, this is May 6th, local voting for your council member or for mayor and propositions are up. See, people will not go out and vote on things like this. Oh, it's not the big thing. It's not the major election. Anytime there is an election, it's major. It's affecting your lifestyle. It's affecting you. It's affecting your neighborhood. You have to get out and vote no matter what. That's May 6th. That's on a Saturday. So there's no excuse not to go out and vote. It's on the weekend. So I just thought I'd drop that in there because that's happening May 6th, coming up.
Yeah, it's not sitting right with me that I cannot find the name of this family at the national address for Biden. But if we can find that, any of our listeners can put that family out there. That, you know, mom and dad was sitting there, just lost their son, and not one of those such and such GOP members stood up to provide any support on that tragedy. And that to me really signified where we're at in the country, you know, that we can't even show sympathy and empathy because we don't want to break the party line and show anything that's going to be, constrict gun laws, you know, or cause more stringent gun laws. That really kind of showed.
I'm not going to say, but you know my thought on sympathy for Major Payne, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, the thing is, you know, in that context, you know, where it's in the in the dictionary, not the library, but in the dictionary. You know, I think we got to have sympathy and empathy on kids that are being killed unnecessarily because of ignorant laws. And you've got to have empathy on the fact that you're not doing your job and that people's lives are being taken and lost, unless that's the goal. And if that is the goal, then the people have to say enough is enough and get their butts out of here. And at a certain point, we got to stop looking at the words and start looking at the actions. That's why I end the show every time with your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying. Because I always, as a good therapist and as a person that's a good citizen, I'll listen to what you say, but I'm going to listen more closely to what you do.
Yeah.
So what did Jackson say? What have you done for me lately? What have you done for me lately to help with this situation out here, guns on the street? And they say, and they push it back to mental health, like get off mental health. Okay. Obviously you got to be mentally ill to do what you're doing. But I tell you what, a mentally ill person without access to an AR can't do a mass shooting if you don't have a gun. Now that's just common sense. But apparently common sense is no longer common.
No.
And that's it. Until common sense becomes common and we're able to start acting on it, we're going to keep running through this circle, keep running through it. And I don't buy for 1 second that it's not ever going to change. You better believe it's going to get changed. The right people just haven't been affected yet.
Yeah.
You know, when we get to that point where the right people get affected, that's when it's going to change. And I'm talking about affects their pocketbooks. You know, I bet you Fox News is going to be a little different going forward when they talk about voting rights and voting activities. Dominion hit them in the bank roll, and I think they're facing another $2.7 billion lawsuit.
Yep. Yep. They are.
So there's ways to make things change. It's gradual, but you understand the nature of how they got to where they were. They played off of everybody's fears and phobias, and not that you wanted to educate, but there's a goal to playing off of people's fear and phobias. And we're seeing it play out with the gun violence, with the illegitimate laws that are passed. You know, Abbott now freeing someone who obviously needs to stay in prison for what he did.
Yeah.
And the motive and the mindset in which he carried. If you act like a terrorist, if you think like a terrorist, act like a terrorist, and think people die because of terrorist acts, then you get treated like one. And if you support terrorist activity, then you get addressed as one as well. So there is no double talk. I'm very clear on how I see Abbott.
Yeah.
If you support that man, then you're supporting what all that he stands for. And that stems back to the ignorant comment that 45 said when you had the neo-Nazis and all that, and they're talking about, oh, there were some good people in there. Good people don't hang around with Nazis. They don't have the same agenda. So birds of a feather flock together.
Yep. Amen to that.
And if you're supporting that flock, then guess what? You're affiliated with it.
Guilty by association, my mom always said.
Listen, you got to figure it out. We got actors right now, very popular African American actor. Hey, he did something stupid. Now he's losing opportunities. He's losing opportunities. He assaulted a female, and rightly so. There's a consequence for that. Not everybody wants to be associated with you. He lost some, I'm not going to say the name, look it up, but, up and coming, phenomenal actor, I thought, but he messed up quick but he's African American. So, that justice comes quick on us. You lose endorsements, you lose connections, you lose money, right? So maybe that's the language we got to talk about. And I put it on the show. I just threw something out there. Maybe for every mass shooting situation, every life that talks is a mandatory $500,000 fine for whoever sells that person a firearm. And that's ridiculous. It's going to put them out of the business. Exactly. That's my point. We've got to, in a serious way, limit the amount of gun access on the street to people who can fall through the background check system. When I bought my AR, it went through. No, I don't have any criminal background. No, I don't have any mental health issues. But what if I'm about to start having one? Now you've armed me. And, the shop, the store on Petrenko Road here, there was also trying to sell me a M15, an M16 with a silencer that was not traceable.
Yeah.
Now, what if I was about to snap? And let me tell you something. Being an African American in this country, I'm surprised more of us have not snapped. But very easily, I could have took that firearm, went right down the road, be fully loaded, and ready to do some foolishness that day, based on the way the laws are written right now.
Yeah.
We've got to change that. Greed, fear, and phobia. The shopkeeper, whoever was working there, greed. They want money. That's why you put weapons like that with a silencer and no social responsibility. Then try to sell it to me for having no serial number on the silencer. There's no good legal reason for you not to have a silencer on a weapon like that, especially one with no serial number. Please, if somebody can think of one, let me know. Because a deer don't care how silent the weapon it is that you kill them with. Maybe you're trying to get two deer. I don't know. But that weapon, you can't shoot. If you shoot a deer with that, ain't going to be nothing left anyway.
That's right.
So, look, greed, fear, and phobias. Stop trying to sell people the wolf ticket because we ain't buying it.
Yeah.
I don't even know why you're selling it. And the truth is coming to light. All these people that live by Fox News as the gospel, talking about all the elections are crooked and this, that, and the other. Are you going to go back on social media and say, wow, I was stupid. Man, I was duped. I was brainwashed. Where are those comments on Facebook? Where are those comments on Twitter, Instagram? You're not going to see any of those. Man, I was brainwashed listening to Fox News. I had no idea they would sit there and lie to me like that. So, and I believed it. I acted on it. The only people I saw, admit that they were brainwashed and they were duped were the people that were going through that January 6th commission.
Yes.
Exactly. And they started facing jail time.
Yeah.
So is that what you got to do? Is that what people have to do before they realize that they've been brainwashed? Some of us been saying this the whole time. I think you called it a long time ago. We called it a cult.
Yeah.
Didn't we go through that
a while back? We sure did. Years ago. We brought that up about a cult
years ago. We might need to play that back.
Yeah.
If you had been listening to Ron and me years ago, you wouldn't have realized that you were sitting there in a cult. And a cult always has to have a mouthpiece. They always have to have some propaganda out there to make you think that what you're believing is correct and everybody else is crazy. Everybody else is crazy, but what you're doing isn't crazy. You're the chosen people. You're the Make America Great people. You're the MAGA people. But let me hit you with all this illusion and manipulation and lies. And then I'm going to have you act. There's always, people understand there's always an act that they're trying to get you to do at some point. Yeah. So once they've got you conditioned, then they're going to want you to act. January 6th was the act. And now that he's now facing charges, he's also sending out other, not even subliminal, overt messages. Wants you to protest. It's going to be scorched earth. What does that sound like?
Star Wars.
Well, it sounds like wars. I don't know about Star Wars, but it sounds like, a well-armed society password for you need to start tearing this mug up till we get our way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I took it. But just understand something. Be careful. Because I just saw on, this probably happened a while ago, the lady that spit on, it was in a Days Inn. You can Google it. It was on the Roland Martin show. There was a Caucasian lady that spit on a Black woman because she didn't feel that she belonged there. And you hear the lady behind the counter saying she's a resident. She can get her breakfast here. The lady comes up and she spits on her. Now, while she's, trying to continue to walk, the next scene, the woman is getting mopped up. Now, she has the camera on this lady as she still mops her up. The woman then is apologizing. She went from, I don't care, and then 9 seconds later, she's on the ground getting beat down. Talking about, I'm sorry about that. Don't let life have to beat you down before you realize white supremacy is an illusion. There is no white supremacy. It's already been established. It's already been established. We are Black supremacy, any type of supremacy. We're human first. Now, if you want to get down to it and look at who are some of the fathers of civilization, who actually created a lot of the things in a healthy way and contributed to humanity, you're going to see some people of color in there. You're going to see some civilizations of color. But when you start getting into supremacy, part of that is that you start developing a hatred. Nationalism and having pride, when it branches over to supremacy, that's when we got a problem. And that bubble is not going to protect you from folks. You do something stupid nowadays, you're going to get dealt with immediately. And I think they know that. So the only way to offset that is to make sure that you're well armed. Right? Because they already know they don't want to end up on that ground like that lady who was spewing that hatred. They don't want to end up like that. So somewhere in that mind, that fear and phobia is there. So what do? They stock up on all these guns. They stock up on all these things and listen to, all this illusion of where the crime is, which is gaslighting, because they're the ones talking about the GOP that are really the harbors of crime. Talk about pro-life, but they don't talk about all the elements of actually making sure that life actually happens in a healthy way. Prenatal care. Making sure that there's adequate access to healthcare. When Obamacare came out, they were opposed to all of those things, even though some of their constituents, a lot of their constituents were the ones who were benefiting from it.
Exactly.
But you say you're pro-life. Well, what is it? What pro-life? What type of life are you pro of? Because if prenatal care isn't there, if the resources aren't there, if the hospitals aren't there to actually ensure life, then how can you be pro-life? Pro what type of life? What are you talking about? So the ideas are half baked. The talking points are not well thought out. There is no plan. You have no party. All the bombastic comments, all the ridiculous things are out there just playing off the fears. Where is the substance to your plans? And if you don't have that, hey, you're just talking. And again, we're going to, I guess, lead the show with this. Went over. Your actions speak so loudly. I can't hear a word you're saying, right? So that's how we end it. I think we've addressed. I don't know if we got to all the questions. I see you try to work them in there, Ron, but
yeah, they're
it is what it is.
But we had people. Everybody, people responding and stuff. But definitely next week, I'm gonna get this thing about Massachusetts law and get that laid out so everybody can see what that state is doing. But until next week, my brother.
All right, and I'm gonna find that family that's not sitting well with me. So was that Biden's address that none of the Republicans stood up for, because we got to bring it up. I got to go to talk about it. So I'll try to bring that up next time.
All right, we'll catch you next week, Joseph.
All right, catch you then. Yeah.
All right. Bye.